How do you think about the unthinkable? How do you plan for the unplannable? How do you see a world ahead when the world of the moment makes no sense whatsoever? These are the questions I'm being asked literally around the globe by every corporation, every startup, every media outlet. We're going through a period of time that is precedented in the fact that humanity has gone through calamities and we have survived them. What's unprecedented are the things that we're reacting to and the uncertainty of when and if this will totally ever end. In this world, you and I as small business owners are trying to plan not for tomorrow, but for this moment. How long will it be before we get back to our normal horizons of 18 months, 36 months, or even longer? The reality is that at the moment, you and I are looking at this very moment and trying to figure out what do we do for the next few moments, the next hour, the next few hours, and hopefully the next few days, and then perhaps the next few weeks before we get on to the next few months. My name's Maurice Misalowski, and as a global business futurist for the last 30 years, I've been looking ahead, plotting the direction that corporations, businesses, individuals, SMEs might be going in, whispering in their ears and talking about what some future horizon point might look like. For me, that meant traveling out often to 2030, 2040, 2050, and I've even done some work around 2100. All of those really don't matter anymore. Today, we're literally talking about the next few moments. So I want to share with you in this piece how we put together a strategy for the unknowable, the unthinkable, and how do we shorten our timelines and become realistic about what we can plan, what we can think about, and what we can do. In this world of uncertainty, I've developed a 5-week rolling strategy, which is adapted from my much longer timeline. It talks about the reality that you and I are very uncertain, and we are saying that right up front. The reality is that things might, will, and do change. A lot of it's outside of our control. It's about governments giving us the capability, the ability, and permission to do things we otherwise might have done. It's about a changing culture, a changing people, changing needs of people, changing technology, and certainly changing health conditions. So we have to act and react accordingly. This 5-week rolling plan that we're going to have a look at really comes out of that. It talks about the reality that we're not necessarily planning in a linear manner. In other words, we're not just looking straight out. There's strong reality here, like snakes and ladders, that you and I will most probably slip down, climb up again, slip down again. And that's part of our new reality for the next while. So this 5-week rolling plan is exactly that. It talks about the normality for us, that strategy starts again the minute something changes out there. But hopefully we can take some of what we've already done forward with us. So let's have a look. Firstly, the time horizon is 0 to 2 weeks. Literally, when something new starts, we go back to 0 and we look out only 2 weeks. Once we've got through 2 weeks without many changes ahead, in other words, it's been fairly much status quo, we then begin to think about the 2 to 5 week period with a little bit more detail. And again, if we've achieved that 5-week period, we then look a little bit further out with just a little bit more certainty into 5 weeks plus. So I want to take you through each of those steps, the 0 to 2, 2 to 5, and 5 weeks plus, and have a look at how our strategy changes and what our focus is in each one of those different time periods. So let's start with now, literally now. And now is either this very moment, or it's because something's happened, because governments have said that we can go out more, we can do more, perhaps we can do less. Perhaps we've found some new technology, perhaps there's a cure out there. Whatever it is that's triggered us to go back and say the world is significantly different, we might need to start, if not again, almost again. And that's what now speaks to. So we as small business owners are going to look ahead just for the next couple of weeks. We're going to try and understand what's happening around us, what's led us to this, and as a result of both of those, what can we do? How can we adjust? How can we tinker? What can we offer? What can we sell? What do we need to hibernate? What is it that we might be able to profit from? We're going to ask ourselves all of those questions as we work our way through the next 0 to 2 weeks. As part of our journey into an uncertain future in this 0 to 2 weeks, we're going to try and get a baseline and understanding for what's happening out there in the supposed real world. We're going to try and get beyond the emotion, beyond the hysteria, to try and understand as best as possible the facts and figures so that we can make a better, more informed decision. In an understanding of what's happening around the world, we're going to take a virtual journey. We're going to have a look at a number of places and spaces that are collecting information that we might be able to use to help us. And these are the sorts of spaces and places that our governments and other bodies are going to as well. So it's best for us to go back and find the direct conversation rather than hearing it third and fourth hand. One of the places to begin is WHO, World Health Organization. And for better or for worse, they are one of the governing bodies at the moment. They are certainly one of the ones making comment and talking about what might be ahead for us. So it's helpful and purposeful for us to be able to have a look directly at what they're saying. I also like to go into John Hopkins. And the reason for that is it's a dashboard. It allows us very quickly to see in a map and in other forms what's happening around the world, to get a handle for how COVID is impacting on different regions, places and spaces. It's up to date, and I find it to be a really purposeful, useful, quick tool for an empirical understanding, in other words, a statistical understanding of the world as it's happening now. For a more localized view and the impacts that COVID might be having on business, on jobs, on consumers, I like to turn to Grattan as one of those places. And when you dive into these buttons, you'll find that it gives you all sorts of information about the impacts of COVID on various industries, various activities. Well worth having a look at to see if your industry is one of them, and if not, have a look at the industries around you. It'll still give you a very good idea of what's happening in a broader societal sense. It's also important to have a look at the Australian government, to go back to the source, see what recommendations, what they're saying can and can't be done, what health messages they're putting out, again helping you to frame your position in all of this as a small business owner. I also want to try and get a very localized idea of what's happening. So I'll often turn to a local chamber of commerce. In this case, it's the Victorian one. You'll find one for every state and territory and every place around the world. See if you can have a look through their blog and often through their first page of what they're talking about, the impacts on their particular region. Another great source always to me is the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the ABS. At the moment, they are pedaling extremely hard. Their stats are coming out fast and thick, and the lag time is quite short, meaning that the stats they're collecting are known to us within a couple of days, a week at the most. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics, again, which is being used as a baseline by most other commentators, by governments and decision makers, is well worth having a look at firsthand to see what they are actually saying and the lessons you might be able to learn for your business and your industry. I also think while we're talking about industry, it's well worth having a look at your roof body, in this case Master Plumbers Association, to see what they might be saying about COVID, the impacts of it, what collectively the industry might be able to do, what they're thinking, the direction they're in. And it's also helpful just to hear from other people around you who are similar to you and see the impacts it's having on them and the opportunities they're making out of it and how they are overcoming. It's a really good way for you to connect up with your tribe. It's also worth in this search finding a group of people whose opinions you value, whose thoughts you think are interesting, and who provoke you to think about the world in a unique or different way. I'd love to be one of those, and my website is morrisfuturist.com. There you'll find lots of webinars, lots of conversations, lots of writing around the topic of COVID, and as well going back to 2005, lots of commentary around over 160 industries. In this timeline, 0 to 2 weeks, we're also looking at those around us, our stakeholders, our logistics partners, all those that might come in and out of our business that help us, like our customers and our staff. And we're wondering what the impacts that we've just found in the previous analysis might have on those people and those industries. The next step then is to put both of those together. What's happening in the macro world, all of those stats we had a look at, all those places we had a tour through, And then what's happening around us, our staff, our logistics, our stakeholders, our customers, what's happening to them. We're trying to put all of that together into a message that helps us to better understand what it is that we can do, how, as a small business, we can best react. How can we change our products and services? How can we change our offerings? How can we adapt to what we think will be the new baseline, at least for the next little while? It's those sorts of activities that take place in 0 to 2. And then we begin, once we've done that, to understand whether what we think we're capable of, we truly are capable of. So go back and recheck if this is what you want to do, that your staff are capable of doing it, your logistics capable of doing it, that you have everything you need or you are able to get or use or have access to, whatever it is else that you might need to do to make these tweaks and changes. And then we're going to put them into place. We're literally going to go out and do it. This is not a time to procrastinate. This is not a time for perfection, because it just won't exist. You and I, after doing careful deliberation, having and knowing as much as we possibly can, have to make a decision, have to make a call. And that's what SME business owners do best, make the call. You know this is not the final incarnation of you. It's just your temporary response to what's occurring now. And as always, after rolling it out, during this 0 to 2 week period, our last step is always to keep a careful eye on what's happening. Adjust, tinker, add a bit of secret sauce or a bit of spice, whatever you need to do. In other words, if something's not quite working, don't give up on it. See what you can do to just tinker it and make it work. That's 0 to 2. Just getting a sense for the world around you, seeing how you might participate and if that's acceptable and profitable for you. So that's our week 0 to 2. So we've had a look at the 0 to 2 weeks. We're now a little bit more certain of what the world might look like, but we know that there's still change ahead. We know at any moment and any day, again, legislation might change, products and services might change. There might be a cure. Anything's possible. And we might have to reset back to 0. But let's keep moving. Let's assume things are still okay. What we've said in the first 2 weeks still holds up. We kind of are working, we're kind of making money, or hopefully we are making a lot of money. But whatever it is, we're still moving, we're still going. So how do we plan a little bit further? There's more that we can do now. And that takes us through to week 2 to 5. It's the next phase where we begin to refine the work that we have already done. It starts off, as any good strategy session does, with a review. What have we learned from 0 to 2 weeks? How have our people coped? How have our logistics coped? How has our product or service changed? What have we had to do? What's the online that we didn't have before, or the physical that we had to adapt? We're trying to learn our lessons as quickly as possible, literally in real time, and evolve incrementally because of them. We also want to go back and continue that scan we did in the first step, just ever so briefly, about the outside world. We want to see as best as we can whether we think that anything's changed around those notions. Is the government likely to make a change or an alteration in the short term? Are there any new implications to this COVID? Is there anything else happening in a broader sense that might impact on us? Even though we don't know exactly what it might be, often we have an inkling or an idea that something's about to change. But if that's not the case, let's continue on with what we already have and what we already know, and let's look for business models. Let's take what we're currently selling, let's look at how we're doing it and ask ourselves, we've done it for a little while. Is there a better way, a different way, a more efficient way to offer or to do what we're currently doing? Are there marketplaces I might be able to get into now that I didn't before? What can I adjust? What can I tinker? How can I make what I put up as a temporary solution into something just a little bit more permanent? I'm also in these weeks, as I have been before, but now in weeks 2 and 5, making careful, deliberate contact with my staff, stakeholders, and other people. I want to keep them in the loop. I want to make sure that they're on board for this journey, that they know how vital they are to me and I am to them. And I also want to see the world through their eyes. I want to experience what they're experiencing with my products and services and generally, so again, I can tinker with it. Especially with staff. If they're distributed, if they're not actually in front of you, if they're not able to speak to you all the time, it really is a great thing to check in with them to see what they're experiencing. What are they being asked for? What are the trigger conversations they're having? All of those are really important. Another thing that's important is to keep one eye on the competition. That's both direct and indirect. People who are doing kind of the same thing, but not in exactly the same way. How are they adopting and adapting? Let's look overseas if we can. We can't physically, of course, but we can virtually. Let's see what others are doing. What new techniques are they using? How have they been able to change or adapt their products and services? Let's learn lessons from them as they will be from us. With all of that, as always, we're asking ourselves the question, impact, impact, impact. What's the difference that's likely to come about because of these changes? How might my industry change? What does it look like or smell like that my business might become somewhere down the track? How might it change? If I think that's the place that we're headed, what can I do right now to point us in that direction? And we're going to try and imagine our business, as difficult as it is, because we're still in the middle of this storm, but we're going to try and imagine our business 12 months from now. If things continue roughly like they are now, where will I be back to? What kind of profitability will I have? What might I be selling? What staff might I have? What logistics might I have? What physical process might I be doing? We're going to try and ask ourselves those questions. Not spend a lot of time answering them yet, but we're going to be asking them. And we're going to keep our antenna open, our COVID antenna. And we're going to be looking for answers to all these questions as we work our way through all of these weeks. We're also, of course, going to keep monitoring, which takes us to the end of 0 to 5. It's always a matter of monitoring. As I've said, looking out in ahead, looking sideways, looking all around to try and preempt as much as possible in this uncertain world what it is that may be coming up for you. And more importantly, how you might be able to pivot to make best use, best example, or to make profit from it. That's our 0 to 2 weeks, 2 weeks to 5 weeks, which takes us through to the final phase. The final phase, of course, is our 5 week plus, the after next, or the resolve. If you've gotten to 5 weeks, and we will and we shall, it means that the world is not yet perfect, it's not yet fully formed, we know that there are changes ahead, we know there are reactions that we will have to make. But we also know 5 weeks in, if things are remaining consistent and not changing dramatically, there's a strong likelihood that some or all of what we're currently doing might carry on into a future landscape for us. And we're trying to assemble and prioritize those things. We're asking ourselves deeper questions about lessons learned, and that's across us, our staff, our logistics, our products, our services, who we're offering it to, how, where, and when. We're also asking ourselves lots of questions about what's likely to change ahead for us. What else do we think might happen? How might the marketplace open up? What does a post-COVID response look like? How likely is our industry to come back? And what will be required of that industry when it does? How will our messaging, our sales and marketing messaging have changed when it comes back? What will I need to do and say and offer to people in this new post-COVID era? We're starting to plan, to strategize, and I would suggest test those theories in this phase. One of the good things about this, if there are any good things, is the reality that people are very forgiving now. That people, you and I, consumers, staff, stakeholders, all know that we're working in an imperfect world, and they'll forgive you for trying something and then retreating from it, because your message will be that we gave it a go. We thought it was right, but then given what we now know, we think there's a better or a different way to go about it. It's a really good time to start tinkering, not just with the COVID response, but if there are things that you've been anxious to do prior to COVID, things you wanted to try, perhaps parts of your business that you wanted to move away from or you wanted to add on, if you wanted to go more into an online space or more into a physical space, those deep wishes you had when pre-COVID there wasn't the time, the energy, and perhaps the possibility of looking at them. Now is a great time to do all of that in this 5 week plus period. So in 5 weeks, we should now have a much better idea of who our business is post-COVID, the products and services that we're going to offer, the way we're going to offer it, who we're going to offer it to, when, where, and why. And what we're looking for now is to roll that out. We again knowing that we might at some point have to go back to 0, but that the work we're doing now is meaningful and purposeful. It's done on a more solid foundation, and likely big elements of it will be able to carry forward regardless of what we find ahead. And as always, we're going to consider at the end of this period that we need to continue to keep scanning the horizon, to keep looking ahead. So what we've done now is to take a 5-week journey into the future with the understanding that snakes and ladders, we might have to go back when there's an impact, but we'll go forward regardless. We'll keep climbing that ladder. We'll keep looking for the next evolution and the next evolution. Small business owners, you and I, are resilient. We know that there's a tomorrow. We know it may be difficult getting there. It may be uncomfortable, uneasy. We're unsure often, even if we will get there. But we know that we will because we always have. The reality is that even in the COVID period, where we have to adjust who we are and what we do, where we have to think about the world in a different way, we can still grow and we can prosper. There is opportunity for us. And that's exactly what small business has always been nimble enough to take advantage of. The opportunities in the world when others are just seeing calamity. It's these opportunities that I want you to take into your 5-week strategy. I want you to think about what a more perfect you might look like. Take the opportunity now to plan ahead for that best version of you and your small business. And I look forward to working with you and discussing what your future might look like. As always, if you need to have the conversation or the chat, need a push in the direction, want to understand your world from a different perspective, I'm around and available. We can catch up in a webinar or catch up on a one-to-one chat. Whatever it is, there's lots of opportunities for you and I to come together and talk about what it is that you need to do to make sure that you are going to have the most extraordinary future.